Robots Radio presents...
Today's chat is brought to you by the support of all our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat. Explore together.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on October 16th, 2020, over on twitch.tv/Focus Fire Chat, as we continue our discussion over the remaining half of the lore book, Duress Egress. This particular episode will serve as what we have come to call the advanced session of the week's exploration. Congratulations to those who have signed up for a deeper dive. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of who all we have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86.
And this is the bow-slinging, hand cannon, trying to figure out how to use it again, green-eyed music lover.
This is the, I guess, Otter Mom. Hey, it's Orchid.
Yeah, Otter Mom.
Hey.
And last but...
Otter Mom / awkward aunt of the show.
Apparently, that's what...
Okay. Is that how the family layout is going to go?
I'm apparently mom.
Yeah. I'm the concerned aunt. Yeah,
the concerned
that's what
aunt.
It is.
Well, last but definitely not least, in the hot seat as guest co-host, we have our good friend I am Ellimist from Guardian. The other half of Guardians of Lore, I believe, is how Orchid called out the on the tweet. Ellimist, how are you doing?
I'm good. Considering how this has gone, I'm good.
Yeah. He had his talk of Supernatural with you. Mm-hmm. It almost turned into a Supernatural podcast.
I'm sure we could have a podcast on Supernatural. There's enough content there.
15 years worth.
Mm-hmm.
That is too much.
What?
Like I said, Orchid and I can go stream Destiny while you guys go do that one.
We'll go play Destiny. Bye.
Over 300 episodes.
Oh, man. Well, real quick before we jump into this one, this week we've talked about Anna, and then we're going to be talking about Vance's story from within Duress and Egress this episode. Real quick, though, before we do that, I just want to put a quick call out for anyone to check out thelorenetwork.com and give us some feedback on what you think about the site's layout. We've kind of updated it a couple times, and I think the current version is a pretty good one, but I'm curious what everyone else what their thoughts on that are. Also, please be sure to, if you like what you're hearing, give us a rating and just leave us a quick review, comments over on iTunes. As with a lot of podcasts that have been kind of mentioning this, that's really what helps podcasts the most is iTunes uses that to drive logarithms behind the scenes. I can totally go into that explanation off air if you want. But if you have a moment, please definitely give us a review and some comments over there. Also, please be sure to give Green's Destiny Lore audio file the same treatment as well. We just appreciate that. And actually, while I'm talking about it, go and do the same for Guardians of Lore as well. We have a whole host of podcasts over on the Lore Network's website. And if you do have a couple minutes, really honestly, iTunes, it takes no time at all. But if you have a couple minutes and you're happy to help out the Lore Network, all the podcasts over there would greatly appreciate it. It helps more than most of us can put into words when people do that. But enough with that. I know everyone is actually looking forward to diving into the discussion about the flyable creatures known as birds.
Jeez.
I'm more like, I was just like, this is going to be a cool episode because it's like Halloween time and this is like a spooky, creepy, like episode because Vance is a weirdo and you want to talk about birds.
Yeah.
Burbs are great.
Birds are amazing.
It's all about the birds.
It's all about the birds. But, you know, Blue, since you're so excited to talk about canaries and all the burbs, why don't you start off the burbs?
Yeah, so this is the first entry. This is the one that is Vance Canary. And actually, it's actually one of my favorite ones of his because of his reaction to the perfect paradox. Brother Vance's smile fell as the Titan entered his sanctum. The smell was unmistakable. Ancient gunpowder, burnt oil, scorched Vex fluid, the burnt tang of steel, overused through 100 lifetimes. You have the perfect paradox, Vance said, his voice as steady as he could manage. He extended his hands. May I? The Titan shrugged and then dug into his pack for the shotgun. He placed it in Vance's waiting hands. He ran his fingers over the barrel and tested the weight of the stock. Ah, he said, not the original perfect paradox, is it? The Titan stood in confusion. Vance waited for a moment with his head tilted before he continued. You did not claim this weapon from the tomb of Saint 14, but through some fractaline-powered tesseract, yes? The Titan nodded, and then stood for a long moment looking at the blind man. That sundial made it, he said finally. Vance's grip tightened on the gun. It was heavy, loaded with 8 shells. Tactical mag. Getting this one had taken some time. In how many timelines did you thoughtlessly tether to our own for this weapon? Our world now bears the strain of how many additional realities in exchange for this hollow abomination? Vance's mind swam at the thought of the infinite web that pooled on the shotgun. How much fractaline did you sacrifice for this? 400 fragments? He paused, aghast. More? It's got a trench barrel, said the Titan helpfully. Remove yourself from my sanctum, Vance said, placing the shotgun down like a dead animal. You have accelerated the end of all things, and I must update my prophecies accordingly. I just love this entry.
I love how Vance is so stinking snarky.
Sorry, but so one of the first things that I love about this card is that the Titan literally uses nonverbal cues with a blind man and then gets confused when he doesn't, he nods and then he's like, oh, I have to talk.
I actually think this is a bit of a call out for a lot of
this is
us in the community.
Straight
yeah,
up.
well, I mean, the whole thing with Vance being a blind man, is he actually blind was such a huge question after D1, right?
And this card is actually the confirmation that he was blind. This was the
it's one of the confirmations.
Well,
no,
but I mean this is the first solid confirmation. Every other reference to Vance about his sight has been implied. Is never actually called out that he is blind until this entry. This book was actually the 3 entries that specifically called out the fact that he does not have sight. Chat, it's a god roll though.
No. I like the one above it. Get this out of my sight. But
this
it
hollow
is out of
abomination. Get this out of my sight.
Lore-wise, Vance brings up an interesting question about the whole multiverse thing, right?
Yes. Actually, he brings up a couple different interesting ones, but yes.
The whole idea that by tethering by bringing something from other verses into our verse, you're tethering them to our verse.
You're creating a linchpin, an artificial linchpin between the different threads, and it's not a good thing. You don't want to do that. And that's where that's what he kind of goes on to say is you've accelerated the end of all things, because the end of things is when you basically create an implosion. Because when you start cross tying lines and threads, it makes those threads not able to stay balanced, and it starts snarling the weave of the entire really multiverse, if you want to look at it that way. If you look at it as a giant pattern that is being woven, and every timeline is its own individual thread, the more threads you merge into one, the more likely you're going to get a snarl that's going to ruin the entire pattern. And that's where Vance's frustration is it's okay, cool. We can, you can tether You can blend lines. That's why the Ahamkara, in my opinion, are so dangerous, is because that's what they do, is they smush threads together. But, like, you know, you can do that a couple times and it won't be a big thing. But, like, you know, he calls out, like, 400 fragments, you know, like these, like, huge amounts of these different, the different timelines that he's actually severed and reconnected to our thing only for a, you know, what was it, a tactical mag and trench barrel shotgun. He's like, this is the most trivial reason.
God roll, though. Blue.
Which is why Guardians are just advancing the end days, according to Vance.
Orchid proves the point.
That Titan is me. I have that roll in my inventory right now.
She's like, I'm looking at that shotgun.
I have it. I'm looking at it in dim as we speak. Because I had to verify that this is the one. I'm like, nope. I have that roll. I'm looking at it.
So, were you a Titan when you got it?
I was.
Or were you playing?
I was playing on my Titan when I got it.
This is Orchid, guys.
Guys, this is me.
Orchid was the one who was like gesticulating at Vance.
Me too. I main a Titan. This is the exact roll I have on my Titan.
Yep. Ellimist and I are bringing about the end days on our Titans.
Like,
this sounds about right.
I first read this and I was like, oh, crud. It's me.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Look at the pair of Titans. Look at the pair of Titans.
The pair of Titans are going to shoulder charge us into the end days.
Real quick, so they mentioned Fractaline. That is actually a callback to, I think it was season 10? No, season
of the Dawn.
Season of Dawn.
Season of the Stonks, yeah.
Polarized Fractaline was the crystalline structures that were formed as a byproduct of the space-time continuum being disrupted. And that was what we used for the Empyrean restoration of effort, which was what we then, when the culmination of that effort was completed, that's what launched the Lighthouse, I believe, at the end of that season. Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
This is what brought Trials back, guys. We did this to ourselves.
The perfect tagline to Trials. We did this to ourselves.
Literally. So we used the polarized Fractaline and the light fused Fractaline to increase the resonant ranks of the various obelisks that we had spread throughout the system. There's a quote, I believe, from Osiris that says, "On Mercury, we've seen a glimpse of what could happen if our enemies gain the power to manipulate time. It is a glimpse of a dark and hopeless future." The other thing that I wanted to call out real quick before we get into the really fun connection of the Canary is the Tesseract, actually. So a Tesseract is also known as a hypercube. It is an actual item that is a 4-dimensional cube. It's actually, so in the same way that a cube is an extension of a square, the Tesseract is the extension of the idea of a square to a 4-dimensional space. That being said, it is actually completely impossible to perfectly represent a hypercube in 2-dimension or even construct one in a 3D model. It is actually not possible to create one perfectly because by definition it's four-dimensional, which we don't have access to in the current. And yes, it is also the thing that is called out in the Avengers.
I was just looking that up. Stay out of my head, Blue.
Yeah, it's
I don't
like
even
looking
have
at
enough room
the
up here for me.
Yeah, looking at the picture of a hypercube is pretty trippy, actually, because basically I think the explanation that I saw was like every facet of it is its own cube, but then it's also it's a cube that is constructed completely out of cubes, is I think the best way I could describe it. It is like looking at a Rorschach and a Magic Eye painting put together. Trials is only 33,000 stonks. My fault.
we're having our own stocks market conversation over here about how we all became financial planners, so we have MBAs in the stocks market. My portfolio, the stocks market crashed.
Yeah. So you are so excited about these canaries, Blue.
Yeah, so
The canary in the coal mine thing?
yep. This one, so like the interesting thing for me, or the kind of like the really cool thing to see with Vance's particular stories, is that every single entry is a callback to a type of songbird, or it has something to do with birds. The first and the last are specifically about songbirds. The second one is about actually prophecy with birds. But this one, and so what you kind of start seeing here is within the story is the presentation of Vance as literally a canary in a coal mine. The reason why, there's some really cool history behind the use of canaries for that specific purpose. But the big thing is that, again, this is tying into this kind of concept of Vance as a early warning system. So the question, therefore, for me, jumps to, well, what is he being a warning system for?
I mean, that's what he's calling out with him writing out his prophecies, too.
Correct. Yep.
That is his call out of what he's doing, but some people could read that fairly easily as he's just copying Osiris, because Osiris wrote prophecies.
He is, I would say that he is not necessarily copying. He is following in the footsteps of Osiris. The prophecies that he writes are similar in scope, but different because he is using... Osiris's prophecies were based off the infinite forest and the probability machine and matrix within that structure. Vance's are based off the musical... resonance that the lighthouses present and stuff.
You don't know that.
He says that.
You don't know that.
Like that was the entire Trials and Tribulations was his using the musical tones.
Right. But that he was writing about it and he was researching it, but he never called out that he was writing prophecies on it in that book. This is the only, I don't remember at least. So in this one, he calls out the prophecies, and the entire card for Canary talks about the idea of tethering these timelines together and whatnot, and that his prophecies for the end of all things are based off of the changes in that. So he's doing the same thing that Osiris did. He may not have been in the Infinite Forest during any of these prophecies, though I don't think Osiris necessarily was for his either.
Yeah, I guess my reading of the connection between the prophecies that Vance writes and the lighthouses is connecting back to something that is going to be called out. I believe it's in the very last one, the infinite simulacrum. Which is a device that he actually constructs in Trials and Tribulations. It's
Simulacrum?
Chapter 9, the Inspire entry. He calls out that when he's constructing the infinite simulacrum, he is basing that off of the concept of simulation seeds and Vex architecture to create a miniature pocket forest that then correlates with the notes and schematics that were derived from Osiris's lore. He also uses the information from the new lighthouse as well as the structure of the old lighthouse to create that thing, which then is going into his writing of newer versions of the prophecies. He goes on to say that within that particular thing, he goes on to say that he could hear the inspired voices weeping not with tears, but in the low ceremonial hum he had come to associate with death. He closed his eyes and saw what was to come, which is where my mind made the connection for the prophecies being derived from the tonal responses there. But yes, you're correct. It's not specifically stated that Vance is writing the prophecies based off that, but that was where my connection between the two was kind of created, was because of what he created within the old lighthouse, and then also the merging of that creation with his knowledge of Osiran lore. And then now we're seeing him talk about his prophecies. Like, he calls out that what he is seeing within the Trials and Tribulations entries is what's to come, which is the entire point of prophecy. So that was where my connecting those two dots was.
I think we should do a quick ad break real quick before we move on too terribly much, because I'm sure we're going to talk about the prophecies further, especially with Passeri at the end. But let's do a quick ad break for our either sponsors or other shows within the Lore Network.
Ahoy there, ye landlubbers. Avast! My name is Captain Logan, and I'll be your guide out on the Sea of Thieves. If you love the idea of stealing treasure, cutting down cursed skeletons, fighting off krakens, and raiding forts filled to the brim with shinies, then Sea of Thieves is the game for you. Join me each week as I dive into the news and bring back the nuggets of information that any sailor worth their weight in salt would desire. You don't have to be a pirate legend to gain access to my podcast. Just search for Keelhauled, a Sea of Thieves podcast in your podcast app of choice, or head over to robotsradio.net or captainlogan.podbeam.com and get ready to set sail for adventure. Arr.
And we're back. And Orchid is doing the wave in the background. For those of you in the audio format, she is making funny faces. For those of you in the live chat, I'm sorry you can't see this. She has yet to allow us to put her pretty face on stream. But
Now she's in her wizard robe.
Yep. She's in Slytherin, guys. It totally makes sense.
I did a costume change.
You need to say it right. Magic missile! Magic missile!
Eldritch blast.
Are there girls there?
Thunderbolt! Thunderbolt!
Cast magic missile at the darkness.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Oh my goodness.
Guys,
Why
it's a
did
Harry
you-
Potter robe. Come on.
Why did you sound like a Valley girl there?
Because I'm from California. That's all I can do. That's all I know. That's all I know. Hermione by way of Los Angeles.
Hermione by way of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine the Harry Potter series being done with like Valley accents?
Could you
for all
imagine
the
Harry
characters
Potter
instead of
but clueless?
British?
Like,
Wait,
oh
it's
my
not?
god, Harry.
Oh my god, Harry, have you seen her outfit? It is hideous.
She's wearing the exact same thing as me, but that's so like 5 days ago.
Like, her tie looks just like my tie, and I am just appalled right now. I need to shorten my tie by 1/2 inch because then I'm unique. Can't you tell?
Oh my god. That girl from Ravenclaw copied my beret.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Like, oh my god.
Flex, let's edit this from my brain.
Like, oh my god. Ginny, did you see Harry's wand?
Yeah, she did.
So, Auspix,
Yeah, let's read this lore
let's
card.
redirect this before it goes wrong.
That's okay. It's all gonna have to be edited anyway. Sorry, Blue.
This is Focus Fire Chat, not Rule 34. So let's move on.
Said sorry, Blue.
No, you're not.
I'm gonna clip that audio, and every time she does something, just in the background, I said sorry.
Okay, Ellimist, could you read Auspix for us?
Yeah. The music rang clear and true. Brother Vance listened. His face, a paroxysm of glory. It repeats, he whispered to himself, and the young warlock, who was bent over the infinite forge, diligently crafting weapons from another age. She listened politely, but heard nothing. She went back to her task. Why do none pity the phoenix? The warlock looked up, startled. Vance was across from her, though she had not noticed his approach. His question came with no preamble, as if the two had been in the midst of a conversation. I'm sorry, offered the warlock. Endless rebirth, true, but each matched by a fiery death, Vance said. No sooner does it clean the ash from its feathers, does it fall again to flame. The blind man turned and bathed his face in the glowing sunlight that streamed into his sanctum, and none speak of its song. The warlock thanked Vance for the use of his forge and stood to leave. You are more than welcome, he said, without turning his head, though his vacant smile had grown kind. He gestured toward the tomes and scrolls on his desk. Help yourself to a prophecy, friend, he said. I believe I have finally finished my studies.
I believe I have finally finished my studies. After talking about rebirth, music, the spheres, phoenixes, Harry Potter, and Harry's wand.
Gross, Vance.
All right, Blue.
All right, so
I know.
Yeah, I got a couple things. So interesting for me here is, first off, the Phoenix. The question of why do none pity the Phoenix is a really interesting presentation of the Phoenix mythology, because the Phoenix is always portrayed as something that power is derived from its death in various mythologies. So there's a couple intriguing points. Throughout all of the mythology in reality about the Phoenix, there is not really anything concisely said about its song, which is an interesting thing for Vance to pull out here. The other thing is that the process of a Phoenix their rebirth is very different depending on whether or not you were looking at like an Egyptian mythology or the Greek mythology or even the later Roman mythologies. There's different processes through which the bird will go through the resurrection process. The Egyptians have it flying and carrying the former Phoenix in a ball of gum to light it on fire and then being reborn within that. Whereas the Greeks actually have the more stereotypical, probably the more well-known one, where the bird will die itself and then rise from the ashes. So there's a couple different really minute details there that differ there. The intriguing connection there is obviously the connection to Guardians with the Phoenix. Vance is not the only person to call out the connection. Shax is very, very, very quick to point out the connection there, to the point where a lot of the imagery within the Crucible is of a Phoenix. The bird, the entire sigil of the Crucible is arguably a Phoenix. You could also comment that it's an Eagle of Power, but the Phoenix makes more sense given that the particular, I think it was the Binary Phoenix class items actually I think it was an entire armor set from Crucible a while back was the Binary Phoenix.
Yes.
Because it's the binary, like the Phoenix sigil and the Eagle of Power are very similar in aesthetics. So whatever. The other call out for me here is Auspix. An Auspix, which is the title of the card, an Auspix is specifically an augur of ancient Rome, with special focus on those who interpreted omens derived from the observation of birds. So these were the people who would watch birds as they fly, and determine, basically based off those natural signs, what the indication of divine approval or disapproval of different events or different upcoming events would be. So yeah, that would again tying into this theme within Vance's story of avian inspiration. I do find that he is focused very heavily on song. Given Vance's history and Vance's story that we've been given within Destiny 2, it's not a surprise, but I do actually like him calling out the really odd thing about the Phoenix, and no one ever speaks about its song. You guys mentioned Harry Potter. Harry Potter is actually one of the very few stories that has a nod to the Phoenix's song actually doing anything. Most mythologies, like the only mythology that references its song is the Egyptian mythology, and really all they say is that it's beautiful. There's no inherent power mentioned about it. It's just, it was called out that it was a beautiful song. Like that's it.
I I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that none speak of its song, which I don't know if Vance is more so commenting on the power aspect of it, or if he's more so commenting on the fact that because his blindness, that is something that he thinks about. He thinks through auditory.
I definitely
visual.
like that interpretation of it too, because as a person who doesn't have the sight or doesn't have sight, a lot of representations of Phoenix is about their plumage and about how like beautiful their plumage is, and all that. And so for Vance, I think you can also see it as a nod to the accessibility of those mythologies for someone of his position. I like that interpretation.
I think the idea of him bringing up the Phoenix is more of the idea of he interprets the world through a different set of. He focuses on different things than we do. So other people who are studying the world, such as like Asher, would be very much so data-based through a visual perspective primarily, whereas Vance has been studying it through auditory resonance and listening to the lighthouses and everything, the vibrations with that. I think my favorite thing, this is just kind of a funny definition for everybody, the paroxysm. A paroxysm is a sudden attack or violent expression of a particular emotion or activity. And so Vance is sitting there just reading along, and then it's just like, ah!
It's his eureka moment.
Mm-hmm. It is his eureka moment. Hey, Orchid.
Why?
I literally just look up.
There you go.
I look up, and all I see is Orchid's face, like, in the camera.
Yeah, she just leans forward and gets like real big-eyed. You ready to talk about the creepiest card in the entire book?
This is my favorite card in the whole book.
It is kind of my favorite card too.
Oh my gosh, when I read this card the first time, I was reading it during lunch at work, like the first day it came out, and then like shrieked, yes! And everyone's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I'm like, it's so good!
It's so metal.
Essentially,
it is
was
so metal.
Me shrieking like victory, and no one understood what my deal was. Okay.
So do you want to read the card?
Passeri. This is Passeri. Shut up, Blue. I'm doing my job here. Be quiet. I am an eminent professional in super pro strats. Pro strats wall hacks. Quiet.
Wow.
She's a three-peaker, guys.
I am a three-peaker. I'm a straight-up three-peaker. I got ding on for a reason, and it's because I like the three-peak.
Wow.
Ellimist, I three-peak in control, okay?
You think you know a person, and then all of a sudden they tell you, I three-peak.
Of course I three-peak. It's part of the game, guys. I hate all of you.
No, you don't.
No, I know. Yeah, I know. I don't.
But those three-peakers.
There's nothing wrong with three-peaking. It's a part of the game. My Wardcliff Coil is better than a sword, so I might as well three-peak. Anyway, I'm going to read this card. Passeri. Shut up, all of you. I'm doing work here. After the Guardian left his sanctum for the last time, Brother Vance collected his few belongings and stepped onto the scorching surface of Mercury. He found the entrance to the infinite forest easily, as though he had practiced the journey endlessly in his mind, because he had. This time, he went through. The forest roared. He was struck by the dizzying void of it. The echoes made no sense. He took his first step into the hallowed place and fell to his knees, vomiting. He struggled with his pack as a tempest beat on his eardrums. He withdrew his infinite simulacrum, impossibly small in this immense space, and with trembling fingers synchronized it to the frequency of the crack in the forest. It ticked like a metronome, and then silence. The forest was sealed. Tentatively, Vance felt his way across the enormous stone as he stood on. At the same time, he skipped effortlessly from the stone as if he had done so countless times before. At the same time, he soared. He was moving in every direction, falling, laughing, singing, down every path, into every reality, spreading his message of hope. In the original, the true Vance felt his infinite parallels erupt from him. He felt them bear him up as they passed. "Thank you," he said wordlessly, unable to breathe from joy. He felt 100,000 touches of reassurance. He found that he was weeping. There, in the swirl of his golden echoes, Brother Vance lifted his voice and began his song. "Some hope for?" His own voice answered him from behind. "The future," it continued. Vance leapt toward it. He recognized the feel of his own cloak, and his hands found its throat. His form twisted, turning cold and sharp beneath his hands. It threw Vance on his back, but he held on. He pushed his hands up the thing's face under its blindfold and dug in with his thumbs. It howled. "How unfortunate," Vance thought to himself behind his wide smile, "that you still have eyes."
So metal. So Vex simulations are not 100% accurate. They don't know everything.
Well, because you never...
Blue, do you want to talk about the Passeri before we get into
yeah.
other aspects?
Yeah, definitely. Real quick, let me jump back over here. Yeah, so Passeri is, I think we kind of mentioned this a little bit of at the start, but Passeri is a suborder of bird that includes all songbirds. It is also referred to Oscines. This group contains about 5,000 or so species all over the world, in which basically the main characteristic is the vocal organ is typically developed in such a way as to produce a diverse and elaborate bird song. There are, if I'm remembering and reading this breakout correctly, there are basically two major lineages of perching birds, which are called passeriforms. The other one being the Tyrani. And the Tyrani have simpler musculatures, so while their vocalizations can be just as complex and striking as those of songbird, they technically are more mechanical sounding. So there is a little bit there. And I think there's actually a third form, but I don't even know how to pronounce that because it's a New Zealand word, and so I'm not going to. Anyways, the other definition of Passeri is a bird having a melodious song or call, and then Green also made the point that I believe it's the Italian word for sparrow. Is that correct, Green? Is that what it's literally in Italian?
Yeah, it's the translation.
So, yeah, it's basically a songbird, and so that connects back into the first entry where it was a canary, because a canary is technically a member of the Passeri suborder, or clad, I think is the other word for it, or clad. I don't know. Scientific terms get really weird, but it's a suborder. So Passeri is the suborder of Passeriformes, which is the order of aves, and then goes all the way up to, what is it, Chordata, and then Animalia. And then, did you want me to talk about the simulacrum, or do you want me to?
Yeah, we can. I mean, it's just a method of like receiving data, right? Like it's just
it's
just a machine.
Yeah, so like I know you called out the simulacrum as the term simulacrum is actually what is it, the image or representation of someone or something. So it's actually it's a simulation. Within Destiny's lore, the infinite simulacrum is actually a device that he built from bits of simulation seeds and Vex architecture to mimic a pocket universe. So it is quite literally a miniature version of the Infinite Forest, with the understanding, obviously, that because it's a miniature version, it's not nearly as powerful, but it creates the simulation of a pocket universe. So it's not actually a pocket universe, but it allows him to kind of tap into the probability logarithms that are offered within the Infinite Forest. Again, possibly to give him access to something similar to what Osiris uses for his prophecies. It's an iForest Mini.
The other thing. What's that?
Brought to you by the Apple line, the iForest Mini.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, right? Except for
it syncs seamlessly with the iPhone 3000.
Oh God! If Apple wasn't around that long,
yeah, they are.
Where there's 3,000 editions.
That
I
vexes
bet you
me.
they will be. They're going to be the one company that survives.
They're the Braytech.
They are
The
Braytech.
Traveler is Apple confirmed. It's just
Yeah,
Steve
that's why there's
Jobs
a-
turned
Either
into
that or
golf
Tesla.
ball.
That's why there's a giant chunk of it missing. Someone took a bite out of it.
Gosh. Oh no. No.
Have you never heard?
I don't want this to become a
It's true.
Excuse me.
Thing now.
Green's like,
You
no.
can't take it back. Can't take it back. It's out there now, Green.
I don't like it. I don't like it. I just don't want it. You know, I don't even know how to.
Clovis
I don't
Bray
know how to
was formed
segue out
from
of
the
this.
acquisition of Tesla by Apple. Continue, Green. So I know that I have an easy segue. Let's talk about the fear frequency because I think that sound made you kind of cringe there.
Lots of sounds make me cringe.
But we're not talking about those. We're going to talk about the fear frequency.
Yeah, so Vance points out in the card that he fell to his knees because of the echoes and vomited, right? Like that is called out pretty early on in the card. And the interesting thing with that as far as lore is that there's an actual scientific thing where sound can cause you to become sick, and it's not necessarily auditory sound for human hearing because our ears are only capable, because of the philia, only capable of hearing at certain frequencies. And so the fact that there are sounds out there that have been proven to be able to make you feel sick because of the low frequency of it, I think is more of what it is that it is an actual thing. There was a year or two ago, that super scare of embassy workers being threatened with sound, like the sound itself was causing issues and making them sick.
Yeah, it's not just a couple of years ago. I mean, look at the conspiracy theories around 5G. It's a similar concept.
Really? They're worried about 5G?
Oh, have you not read these? I'm going to be sending you
I've been staying
so
off
many
the
fun
internet.
threads to read. It's some good stuff.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Interesting.
No.
If you want to read more about the fear frequency,
No.
there is an article out there that I think it got deleted earlier, which stinks. There is an article out there from lifehacker.com about does sound make you sick? And it talks about the actual frequency numbers and how it affects the body and the involuntary contractions that the muscles tend to have around it, and how it can physically make you ill. And some of the different things they talk about is not only just a nausea thing, but also headaches and a few other symptoms because of the sound. So that's fun. So if you really want to annoy somebody, like not like you annoy your mother by playing the same song over and over your senior year, may have totally done that.
Well, that's also like the idea that, you can't hear certain frequencies, right? Like what was it? Was it a couple of years? I don't know if it's still a thing, but they have like ringtones that are supposed to be beyond the perception of certain age groups.
Yeah, so the ears, the philia within the ears itself will slowly begin to get damaged over time. And it can be due to having worked in an environment where it is very, very loud, or you're surrounded by very, very intense frequencies. Band directors often lose their hearing after a certain age, after having taught so many years, and they have to wear earplugs if you're wanting to preserve it. I actually wore earplugs when I was teaching, and specialized ones that just cut out most of it. But yeah, you can injure your hearing pretty easily, and many older folks who have gone through life and may have gone to Woodstock or may have just listened to the good old radio a little too loud can cause major damage to their ears.
As Dancing says, yeah, those hearables can be nasty. The head shake is like it's the payment of all of this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, actually, that's actually something that I have had a conversation with neighbors about with my 7-year-old, because he likes
You're
helping.
too loud over there.
Oh, well, actually, it's about like when we do yard work. So lawnmowers have a certain volume, and as like younger kids, they actually like, that's why it's so important to have earphones, or not necessarily earphones, but just covers over their ears, is because you can actually irreparably damage their hearing with something as, for us, as simple as a lawnmower, because we're kind of used to it, but it's literally something that can damage that.
This is true.
Yes. No, chat was very concerned there for a second. I do not talk to my neighbors about Destiny lore. No, that's...
I do.
Dancing was very
it keeps
concerned
them away,
there.
don't worry.
Very concerned.
Destiny lore can irreparably damage your hearing. Amazing. So Brother Vance moves through the forest. Are those echoes? Because he has multiple instances of himself break off, where he's simultaneously skipping, flying, walking, vomiting. All of this is all happening basically at the same time. Is that echoes of himself, like Osiris echoes, or is this just the Vex simulating him and he's able to witness it all? Which, how is he witnessing it all?
Yes.
How is he?
Yeah.
I mean, that gets into the argument of what is an echo. Is it a Vex copy, or is it something that, I mean, because up until this entry, we had all assumed that the echoes were something unique to Osiris.
But if the echoes are Vex copies,
you're getting there.
But
Keep
Osiris, but Osiris used his echoes to accomplish things that he wanted. I hate the Vex so much.
Wibbly wobbly.
Actually, I think technically they're reflections, not echoes, because echoes is. I'm looking real quick. Echoes are reserved for taking kings. Reflections are the things that are suited for traversing the sundial.
They're copies. Semantics.
It's important, though. It is important. That was from maintenance operations log. Osiris translates the reflections as a manifestation of light, and the echoes as something that is reserved for taking kings.
Ambre.
Why that song?
Because it wasn't in the original soundtrack.
It was in the D2, though, because that was the Easter egg in the very first mission, is the old bar played Hope for the Future ad nauseum. You could stand there for hours and it would play.
That, and it's in the Lost Sector right next to Spider.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. The bar.
The disco.
The cantina.
Yeah, I love that.
Honestly, I just think they like throwing that song in wherever they can.
Because they can.
Just because they can.
It is the only song in Destiny that has words.
It is.
That is within the game.
I really don't like the song.
Well, I mean, technically 7 Hells and 7 Heavens have words, but they're not in the actual songs.
Right. That's what I was...
Yeah. Because that was a separate entry, right? That was not considered part of the 7 Hells, 7 Heavens, right?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting call-out, and the fact that Brother Vance knows it is why that song is a hit in the Destiny universe, because Brother Vance must have heard it at the tower or wherever on the Guardian radio that's out there.
It's actually Osiris's favorite song, and that's the only reason why he likes it.
No, I don't want that to be a thing.
I mean, it playing in the tower bar, it would make sense that then Vance would have experienced that song. Like that is a legit connection to be made there. Like it is.
Do we want to talk about Vance putting out the eyes?
You mean Vance's redemption as a character?
Vance redeeming himself in my eyes for removing his own eyes. Vance being,
but not his own eyes.
Why did he pick that one to do?
Because that was the one that was
running around. Why is he Is he just mad because the copy finished the song before he could?
Because that's not a
did he
copy.
Sing it out of tune.
That wasn't a reflection.
Like, why is Brother Vance so angry at this guy that he puts the eyes out of his own echo reflection?
I mean, arguably that wasn't a reflection. That was the whole point.
That they snuck in a reflection, Vex?
No, the darkness.
Right, but is the darkness within the infinite forest?
That's what it is. That's what he was talking about, because that was the entire reason that he locks it up within They Are Not Coming. And that was the whole thing with Zavala and Vance was given basically the instructions to close up the infinite forest to prevent the darkness from gaining access to it.
But he locks himself inside?
It might have been the only way.
Thus bringing in the darkness with him?
But that's why he attacked it. Was he, because it got in. That's why he attacked it and he killed it, is because it got into the forest. It was his job to defend the forest from it invading. Because, I mean, the thing is that, again, the infinite forest is a massive probability engine.
Right, but here's why I say it's a Vex and not necessarily the darkness. There's a line in here, it says, its form twisted, turning cold and sharp beneath his hands.
I can see that too, yeah. I mean, so you think it's a Vex, you think it's an actual... I think it's a Vex simulating, because he's not a Guardian. I think the Vex can simulate him a little bit more accurately. I could see that, yeah. That's a fair point, actually. Because he doesn't have the paracausal capabilities that the Guardians have with the light.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is also why I think all those different reflections going away from him are also simulations.
I mean, I guess that begs the question, too, then, of the difference between the reflections presented here by Vance and the reflections that we see with Osiris. Mm-hmm. Because if these are Vex-inspired simulations...
Which is why I mentioned that the Vex simulations are imperfect, that they only have so much data, because we didn't even know that Vance does not have eyes. Although, if you had glitched into his frame back in D1, you could see that he had no eyes, I think, back in the day. Or maybe his character model did have eyes. I don't remember.
Well, I mean... Oh, I see what you're saying, because they would... Oh, go for it.
Because
now
they have a visual...
Oh, sorry.
Go for it, E. No, you're good.
Now, my thing is, we don't have anything about all his other reflections having eyes. Just the one that he actually ripped the eyes out of. If
Correct.
We are going off of the fact that, or the idea that it was, if it was a Vex, then I could see all of them potentially having eyes. But if we're going off the fact that it's the darkness, then all his other reflections could potentially not have eyes.
That would mean the Vex, if the Vex were the other reflections and not the final reflection that he pokes out, that would mean the Vex have a more perfect simulation than the darkness itself. Bottom line is, regardless of whether or not the other reflections have eyes or not, the simulation or the darkness that is there is imperfect in its replication of him. That they don't actually know everything about him. They only see the outside. They don't know everything within. What do you think, Blue?
So, again, this is just me kind of talking out, brainstorming, but so if you go back, he's calling out the fact that he feels the infinite parallels erupt from within him. And it says, the original True Vance felt his infinite parallels erupt from him. He felt them bear him up as they passed. He says that he felt his way across the enormous stone. At the same time, he skipped effortlessly. At the same time, he soared. He was moving in every direction, falling, laughing, singing down every path into every reality, spreading his message of hope. So that's very similar to the cutscene where we see Osiris kind of send out his reflections within Curse of Osiris. So my thought here is when it shifts to when he starts singing, right? He starts his song, and then he hears his own voice from behind him. The nuanced difference that I at least read was that he is not experiencing that. It is an other, because when it says he leapt toward it, he says he recognized the feel of his own cloak and his hands found its throat. Its form twisted, and that goes back into, what you were talking, Green. But all up until that point, every time he talked about one of the parallels, he was also cool, like he was experiencing their experience simultaneously as his own. Whereas in this attack, he did not experience that. And it goes on, when it threw Vance on his back, he held on. He pushed his hands up the thing's face under its blindfold and dug in with his thumbs. Like, there's a difference here between the explanation of the experience of him attacking this thing than him being touched and reassured by his reflections earlier.
So the bottom line is the initials are him, but the actual one at the end is not. Therefore, he attacks it because it was not something that he had experienced or thought to experience.
Yeah, my understanding is that whether it's the Vex or the Darkness, they tried to Trojan horse a copy of him into his group, and he was able to recognize that, like, he started the song. I don't know, like, if that was a trap or whatever, if he was just, so ecstatic. But when he heard another reflection singing the refrain with it, he also didn't experience that reflection. So it goes back into, like, my idea of, like, the whole multiple man concept, like multiple man or Dr. Manhattan, from Watchmen. Like, this entire concept is you have a character who is able to split, but they also simultaneously experience the events of their various personalities or of their various entities. And so you have someone who's basically trying to disguise whatever as one of those. But that entity is not part of that, like, that hive network mind. And so as the original, Vance recognizes that and attacks it. Right. And given the fact that this is where I totally do see what you're saying about it being a Vex, because of the call out for it being cold and sharp. But I do, like, the reason why I still really hold that this is not the same as the Reflections is because of that slight shift in the way that it's described. Because, like, the original, the true Vance felt his infinite parallels. He felt them bear him up. He was able to talk to them wordlessly, and that's like that euphoria. He starts the song, and then he gets answered from behind him, and I just constantly am getting this idea of, like, he's like, well, what is going on?
Ellimist, I want you to talk about what you put in chat real quick, and I want to talk about this.
Okay. So like, all of the other ones that are actually split from Vance would be the actual Reflections, and then it talks about the final one. Its form twisted, turning cold and sharp beneath his hands.
Mm-hmm.
Vex are typically, like, rounded off and aesthetically pleasing. So what if it happens to be a new enemy type?
A warrior Vex?
The Veil?
No!
You're the one who put it in chat. I don't know why you're flailing your arms.
I was being facetious.
Actually, I want to know, I want to talk about something else, too. You mentioned the idea of the multiple man and how Ellimist brought up in chat also that it's like a hive mind, which begs the question, is the concept of the Vex and the hive mind part of a supercomputer simulation aspect, or is it something unique to the Vex? Because if Osiris and Brother Vance can both do that, then the concept of having a hive mind split from a singular entity and that whole exo connection to the Vex. Now my spinfoil brain goes Clovis Bray, Vex, God damn it.
Clovis is the darkness?
Because, well, I mean, you have the Clovis Bray creates a lot of problems. they solve a lot of problems, but they also seem to create as many problems as they solve.
Weyland Yutani, what?
I know that the Vex were there first, though. Mm-hmm. So if the Vex were there first and the Ishtar Collective was the one studying them, trying to figure out what's going on with them, and they discover these aspects, timey, wimey, wibbly wobbly. The Vex are just us traveling back in time and causing our own problems. But if it's like the Merchant and the Alchemist, we've already done this problem.
Yeah,
so it's destiny.
But is it? Is it? Ah!
I hate time travel. This is why I hate the Vex.
Yeah, well, that's why Black Flag did bring up something else about the potential of it being the darkness. What he says, what does baptism in the darkness do? Like when you saw the Taken, it perfects you. So if the darkness was trying to mimic Vance, a perfected Vance would have eyes. Is an argument to be posited for it being the darkness, is because they basically present a perfected form of Vance.
But they don't. They present a perfected form in a venue or an aspect, not necessarily the physical aspect, but in an aspect of the character and the behavior of that person or thing. Right. Like they're fixing a problem with the thrall being too easily shot down, so they make it to where the thrall are
easy shot down,
moving around like sporadic. The scions, I mean, they're all still easy to shoot, right? But
says you.
Seriously, I ran with Orchid the other day, Altars of Sorrow with Ruinous Effigy, and just stood there like Blue was. That was the most fun of doing nothing I have done in a while.
What was this?
To shoot Ruinous Effigy during Altars of Sorrow. We were getting her tier 5 done.
It's so fun. Like you literally just
I love Ruinous Effigy.
Just stand in the valley and they all run to you. You're like, yes, come to me.
Same with Witherhoard.
Witherhoard is great. Yeah, but Witherhoard isn't as fun as like running into a batch of enemies and then just like holding the button down, watching them evaporate before your eyes.
Yeah.
It's much more satisfying.
No, it does help if someone is running Witherhoard and you're running Ruinous Effigy.
This is true. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, there was a couple random altars that I was running, and we had 2 Titans who were running suppression grenades, and they also had Witherhoards, and I had Ruinous. So I literally would just go stand in the bubble where everything was spawning. It was absolute chaos. We got through so many.
It is fun.
We got through so many tiers so fast that way.
How do you tank as a hunter? Put on Ruinous Effigy.
Yep.
Ooh.
Then you can be a bouncing boot
The only
ball.
thing you
Just ask Cole.
God. That's strategy for taking out the Shrieker still is so obscene. Did you guys see that tweet? Whenever Cole and I run the interference mission, she always runs Ruinous Effigy, and then when we get to the Shrieker in the tree room where Eris is normally, she just jumps up and down with the sphere expanded. And it looks so stupid because she can't stay up there very long, but she does a ton of damage. So I'm standing back and just shooting arrow after arrow in it, and you just see this bouncing purple ball underneath it.
The best part is she died at the end.
She did die at the end. Serves her right.
Jeez.
Anyway, do we have any other thoughts about Brother Vance and his transformation before we kind of wrap up everything?
Yeah, go for it, Orchid.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think this is Bungie's way of giving him like a really nice send-off. I know we've talked about all the other characters since this is the last character that we've been speaking of the 4, that they've all kind of gotten this really nice like heroic moment in the end. But Brother Vance has been like the weakest of the 4 characters, I really believe. And this is like the most like badass moment of all the characters. Honestly.
I like how I agree 100% with that, and I also like how Vance is the only non-guardian out of the vendors here, and he is one that arguably is the one taking on whatever enemy this is directly. Like, you actually see...
Well, Asher does, too.
Well, but Asher doesn't... I mean, Asher takes on the Pyramidian. Right, but, like, Vance, I got the sense of, like, Vance actually, like, walks into a fight without realizing... Like, Asher, I don't know. Like, Asher, I kind of think, like, Asher doesn't take gambles. I think Asher studies things ad infinitum, and then, you know, he plays the card counting game. He knows when he's going to win, and then wins. Whereas Vance, it kind of feels like I don't know, like, the fact that Vance is not a Guardian to me adds a lot of weight to his decision here. And he doesn't balk. Like, everyone loves making fun of Vance for, you know, being whiny or being blah, blah, blah. But here you see Vance being actually put in a corner, and his response is one of the most brutal of all of the responses out there. Like, he literally, he gets put in a corner, and instead of, like, whining about it or anything like that, he just gouges the eyes out.
You could say that this is the most crazy ending to all of it, because if Vance is... There's nothing saying that the thing that sings back to him is malicious, right? Like, it's interpreted as such because it's different, because it has eyes.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
Vance's reaction is pretty extreme to literally turn around and poke its eyes out. Now, granted, it was grappling with it on the floor, but I don't know. It could be Vance's breaking point.
It could be. I mean, again, that's where I kind of focus in on that, like, that slight nuance of the experience. He's not, like, it's called out that he doesn't experience his hands. Like, he feels his hands on its throat, but he doesn't feel his hands on his own throat, like with all the other parallels. So that was, like, where I kind of see the cause for his violence towards it. I don't know. Ellimist?
I like how Green pretty much called it out, that, you know, this was Vance's breaking point. Like, we've been dogging him for years, and this was the first chance that he actually had to actually go out and do something himself. And it was like all that pent up rage just came out and just gouged whatever this thing's eyes out.
Witness me!
This is what happens when you bully somebody for too long.
They gouge your eyes out.
They
I
come
know.
at you. They come... Orchid's confusion.
What did you say?
Notice me, senpai.
This is what happens when you push, like, if you're bullying somebody to a breaking point.
Okay.
You did not hear that, did you?
That is not the word I heard.
Can you type the word that you did hear, because
let's do shoutouts. Well, she does that because I have a feeling I know what she's thinking.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, so Ellimist, shoutouts.
Yeah. Shout out to you guys. This has been fun. It's always a blast just hanging out with you guys.
Yee. I like doing these. I like having more voices on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
I like, especially having other voices who spend way too much time thinking about the same stuff that we spend way too much time thinking about.
I'm still on Pigeon Lord, so I mean, not much thinking outside of that.
So, Orchid, do you have any shout-outs? Or can you even speak at the moment? I may be making Orchid blush.
Did Orchid pass out? Like, I hear that's an affliction.
Orchid's fine.
F's in chat for Orchid.
God. I'm gonna shout out everybody in chat. Shout out Viru. I cannot shout that out. This is a family-friendly podcast.
I mean, you can shout it out, just don't explain it.
Shout out Rule 34.
Oh,
and all the other rules around it.
Oh.
Especially 34.
How do you think families are created?
Wink, wonk.
Anyway.
God, guys. Great.
Blue, take us out.
Yeah.
Just again, a big shout out to everyone here, and then also a quick reminder to let us know your thoughts on our website redesign over on thelorenetwork.com, as well as a quick request to send us a review and your thoughts and a comment over on iTunes for Focus Fire Chat or Destiny Lore Audiophile or any of the podcasts that are on the Lore Network or within the Robots Radio Network as well. Actually, if you guys are feeling generous and have a bit of time to spare over on iTunes and want to just click all the buttons and send all the words, we really appreciate it. But until next time, remember, with wisdom we conquer, stand strong, stand tall, and keep exploring. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusedFireChat. Links to all our episode archives can be found at www.thelorenetwork.com. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any comments and or questions for the team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.